seen, so that even those who are listening to us can actually listen and hear? Because there could be changes, they're happening before your very eyes, but you're not even clear what it is that's happening.
Okay, now I have told you the example, the best and living example, the example that led to catastrophic observations on our part was the Mathare Hospital, which, as I said, was declared a monument of shame for us. That, for me, the things that are going on, the Gazette notice of August last year that declared the hospital to be semi-autonomous, the fact that it is now a parastatal, that for me is a concrete example of something that is happening. Number two, and again I've mentioned this, the task force, members of the task force have been taken by government to a site that is there and it's feasible, and government has allocated 200 acres of land to Mathare Hospital for the development of a new teaching referral hospital that will be a center of excellence, not just for Kenya and the region. So if those are two concrete things in our report that have found, for me, the light of day, and that is visible.
Thank you very much. Now, where exactly is this new site? Where is this new site, and when do you think? Again, forgive me for assuming duties that actually the government's, but since you have been taken there, when does the government suppose that they might actually begin the actual process of constructing this unit?
No. Things don't go like. It's a huge site. I think where the land has been identified. The task force members who were there were taken there physically by the cabinet secretary, by the people of the Ministry of Land. The process of issuing title right now, as we speak, is ongoing. The big ships take long to turn. I think this one will take some time to turn, but I can tell you, with my own eyes, I have seen this land, and it's up actually in Ngong Hill, near the new tunnel that links the SGR from Nairobi to Suswa, but on this side of the city of Nairobi. But it's there, and it's real, and it's in Ngong.
Dr. Okay, there is the role of the government, but government cannot do some of these things alone. A big player there is the community, then the media. How do you see the roles of these two particular persons coming into, sorting out the issues or being able to address the issues of mental health?
Let's start with the media. You media now.
Okay.
The fact that you have invited Mheshimiwa Kasanga and myself this morning is evidence that now, whether you like it or not, matters mental health are on the table, and that if you have made the editorial decision that it is wise, right, and proper for your listeners to be exposed to a whole hour of a conversation on mental health. I can tell you, and I've been around for many years, this kind of editorial decision that you have made this morning, for me, is new. It might appear, because you're young, that this has always been the case. It's not always been the case. People did not want to talk about mental health and well-being. But it's only in the last few years that editorial time is put in, and it's not just in Spice. Other media houses have seen the value and utility. So I'm sorry, but I have to commend you, people of the media, because you have responded quite correctly and appropriately. And I would like to encourage you to continue along that line. Number two, society, the community. I can tell you, it's not just small groups. I can tell you confidently that the teaching profession has embraced in a way that has not perhaps reached the media. Industry is calling mental health specialists all over to help them be educated. The discipline forces are doing the same. Our community, surprise, has received, okay, I sound like an optimist in everything I say, but that's just because of the way I am. But it's true. More and more organizations are calling on the Kenya Psychiatric Association and other mental health experts for lessons and training in the field of mental health. There is more than a silver lining in this otherwise very dark cloud.
Dr. Njenga, I think this is something for you and also for Senator Kasanga, sorry. But if we start off with you, Daktari, a lot of the mental health, pressure can be attributed to economic times that we saw because of COVID-19. From what you've been able to see, even before the advent of COVID until after, was that burden as strong pre-COVID as it is now? And can we say that COVID contributed significantly to this?
Yes. In May of 2020, 2 months after COVID arrived in this country, the World Health Organization, in its wisdom, pushed out a warning to the entire globe. I think it was the 15th of May. And the warning was very succinct, and it turned out to have been completely prophetic. It warned us that as the pandemic goes on to envelope the world, incidents of mental health needs, insomnia, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, and other drug users would shoot up because of the kind of stresses and pressures that you have mentioned that are attendant to the pandemic. Exactly what was predicted has happened. There are more and more people abusing alcohol and drugs. There are more and more people with depression and anxiety disorders, people losing. So the answer is yes. What COVID did, COVID found a fire of mental illnesses that was burning, but COVID ikalete mafuta ya taa na petroli kajumlisha. Now the fire, now you are laughing again, but that's what happened.
Senator.
Yeah. No, I agree with the doctor, definitely. Although I'm not as optimistic as he is, I guess because when I'm a legislator, and we have to be very critical of the government. And I have to say, since 2018, when I started, when I was roped into this advocacy work for mental health, not enough. Honestly, not enough is being done. And of course, COVID has made things worse, as the doctor has said. But the fact remains, we were still in a bad way even before, because the statistics that the doctor has mentioned in the report were pre-COVID statistics. So we're still in a bad way. We're still in a state of emergency even then. So a lot more needed to have been done by the government. In fact, from the time the president pronounced himself on it, when he pronounced himself on the issue of depression, you would have expected the cogs to turn a little faster when it comes to some form of intervention. Now, rightfully, the doctor also says we should approach mental health the way we approached, HIV back in the 80s and 90s. So if that is the case, from the time the president pronounced himself, shouldn't we be seeing a lot more communication? Should we be seeing a lot more intervention? By now, shouldn't we be seeing an active approach towards mental health intervention, say from the Ministry of Education? Because, it has multidimensional approach. It has a wide multidimensional approach. So you'd expect that by now, certain other, groups have been seized. Now I know the uniformed force have been seized of this issue. It was included in our bill when our bill went to National Assembly. But now I know there's some active approach towards helping our men in uniform when it comes to mental health, because, they are most affected because of post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety like that. But without a doubt, COVID has definitely taken it to the next level. Of course, making it even now beyond an emergency situation. Mm-hmm. I have had, when I was chairing the ad hoc committee on COVID, of course, I had the question of, what interventions are happening from the national response team and other county response teams when it comes to helping people with mental illnesses, the access to medication, which had become a challenge when the skies had closed down. We had a worry that those who need constant medication may not get their medication. We even had to sit with KEMSA and other organizations, government organizations, to be sure that, our mental health space is protected. But it was still a challenge. And then there's, of course, NHIS. Access to mental health care is still, it's still not there for most of our citizens.
But Senator, if I focus on what you as senators can do, what is it that you plan to do and you plan to put in place to ensure that these changes that are really definitely much needed actually happen?
If we had a legislation on which we can task the county government, like from Senate, because that is the oversight role of Senate, then we would be asking these questions. We would be sending out questions to the counties and asking them, what have you done? You're mandated to set up a mental health board. You're mandated to set out a budget of X amount of money. How are you using that budget? We would be asking those questions. We'd be asking, how many staff members now do you have?
Is something preventing you from asking those questions, Senator?
No, we do. Actually, we have asked those questions before.
And what responses have you received?
Not much. Not much. I'm sorry to say. In my advocacy work, again, this is what I do from a personal point of view. I have interacted with the county governments of Kisumu, Makueni, Machakos, and Nairobi when it comes to mental health. And I can tell you they are doing some active work when it comes to that. In fact, like Kisumu has a directorate of mental health. They have a lot of challenges there, but they also have a lot of NGOs working there and supporting the county government to set up their policy interventions. Makueni already has a good plan for mental health. They have even rolled out practitioners to the sub-county levels, and they are doing some impressive work when it comes to that, including, information, giving information to their citizens on issues to do with mental health. Nairobi as well, Machakos as well. So there are counties I can say that I've interacted with that are doing something. But you see, we need also more money to be devolved down to the counties. That it also boils down to an issue of resources. And of course, then the goodwill to go with that. So these questions, I can assure you, we have asked. But a lot more still needs to be done from a national level so that then we can get every cog turning on that matter.
And as we conclude, Daktari, I'd like you to pass on a message to those who are listening and those who are going to watch this broadcast later. There are many cases of people who maybe they don't even know, but they are suffering from some form of mental illness, one or the other. What would you like to tell the society? I mean, as we are going through the emotions of COVID-19, of the economy and everything else, what is it that you'd like to tell people? How, one, can we identify the mental health cases? What can we do about that? How can we encourage one another?
There's a lot of questions, but I'll try and answer them all in one breath. The first thing is that this thing of mental disorders is here with us. It's here to stay, and it's real. And the only way to deal with any challenge that comes our way as human beings is to be able, number one, to recognize it for what it is, to understand and appreciate what its potential consequences might be if you don't do anything about it. But crucially, and this is something I have said many times before, I would like us all to understand two things. One, that mental health issues are not two or three matters. There are almost 300 different mental health conditions that exist in the diagnostic and statistical manuals that define the mental disorders. The ones that we see and you alluded to that lead sometimes people to act in aggressive or violent are actually, ironically, in the minority. The more common, the so-called common mental disorders, CMDs, are the kind of things that you and I might be harboring this morning, but did not stop us coming to work. Situation like people who didn't sleep properly at night, people were a bit irritable this morning, People are feeling a little bit sad and anxious and afraid. But the last thing I'd like to say in this very long question you've asked me is this. Mental illnesses are extremely easy to recognize, to diagnose, and when diagnosed and treated early, the outcome of mental illnesses is excellent. People get better. People go back to radio and television stations. People go back to the classrooms and teach. Mothers go and look after their little babies. Doctors go back to work. Police officers go back and keep us safe. Even politicians go and campaign when they get. So really, my overriding message is on the message of early diagnosis, early interventions, and excellent outcomes. And I say this from many, many, many years of treating these conditions.
Asante sana daktari. Dr. Frank Njenga is a psychiatrist and mental health specialist, and Sylvia Kasanga is nominated senator. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we wish you a good day. Yes, your parting shot.
Please,
as well.
by all means.
Yes.
Passing shot. Just to tell our listeners out there and our viewers that we need to be so self-aware. You know, self-awareness is critical. Listen to yourself, listen to your body when you wake up, and also to recognize that the social determinants that are there that cause mental illnesses are our everyday life. Traffic, for instance, in Nairobi, is enough to cause you enough anxiety that can make you get to a place of work when you have, your heightened levels of anxiety that can cause a lot more distress. And lastly, let us keep this conversation alive. That is something I always tell the groups of people that I talk to. We must keep this conversation going. We must fight stigma by talking more and more about it. And I thank you, Spice FM, for having this 1 hour today. And I just encourage you a lot more. Get more people to talk about it and, highlight more and give more light to this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well said. And in fact, thank you very much for reminding us that we needed to give you that opportunity to tell us that. Asante sana. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So good conversations that we've had this morning from covering several aspects of health, from the health of our healthcare to the health of our people, okay? And as we come to the end of this, to what is expected now to deal with COVID-19 in terms of giving ourselves vaccines and all, first on mental health, and I think that the questions that we kept asking Dr. Frank Njenga, and he was saying it without saying it, is the government is doing a little bit, but it's not doing as much as it should be doing, especially when it comes to matter of elevating a conversation such as this that then becomes a national emergency.
Actually, the government is doing what it does best. This is it.
Pussyfooting.
This is it. Because he gave the example of the issues of HIV and AIDS, and he was right about what the president did. But to add on to that, the reason why HIV succeeded as it did was the bulk of that work was funded.
Yeah, I was about to say that. The government talks, but it doesn't follow the talk with money.
It was funded. For the longest time, it was funded. Almost every aspect of HIV in this country was funded.
Externally funded.
Yes, externally funded, and they followed up with measures and standards that they wanted maintained.
Yeah.
And it was supervised and it was guaranteed. So it contributed significantly. Remember, we already had the people who could do this work. But because of that, it was done. Now, we will still have the people who can do this work that we're talking about with regards to mental health. But the government effort is one thing. And I'm saying this is it. This is the standard that the government tends to have.
Mental illness.
Yes.
Okay. A minute for you, Dr. to give you a parting shot. And thank you very much for joining us today. Of course, we hope to have you again soon.
No, it's always a pleasure to be here at the Situation Room. And as we've seen from last year, we are not running away from discussing health issues. I think for me as a country and for this current administration, it may be too late to have taken us to the promised land of universal health coverage, universal health access, but at least we've made a step. So maybe the conversations we are going to have this year will be the starting point to taking us to that promised land where, in case another pandemic comes, we don't have these same conversations that we are having, that we will have learned a lesson or two from last year. From this year, I'm sure we'll learn a lot of lessons from the vaccine distribution. So hopefully those lessons will set us up for something better when it come in the subsequent years. But I think we'll be talking about health as a prominent front page headline, story one, for a better part of this year.
Very good. City, that thing from the village,
Well,
what is it called again?
an agama lizard.
That one.
An agama lizard in the
iguana.
village will remain an agama lizard in town. It won't become a gecko, neither will it become a monitor lizard.
Or
No,
Burkeng.
yeah, it will not.
Burkeng.
Yes. It will just remain an agama lizard.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. We wish you a lovely day as it comes now to 10 o'clock. Remember, you have uninterrupted music between now and 3 o'clock. And then Monique will be here with Spice Drive at 3 to 7. And then the adults in the room from 7 to 10. Then more music until we come back.